let's give a practical piece of advice for people who, due to their work schedule, like most people on the planet, make monthly contributions to a retirement fund. As we know, most retirement funds are running deep deficits. Money gets redirected elsewhere, and so on. And from that perspective, the question even seems constructive. One day, there might simply be nothing left to pay out.
We need to understand something important. There's nothing to pay out. For one simple reason, what we're dealing with now is energy informational dependency. If a person has created something truly beneficial for planet Earth, if they've acted in an ecologically responsible way, both in behavior and in attitude, if they didn't blame or judge others for their own lack of fulfillment, then without exception, the planet, the ecosystem, society, let's say the universe, will create the conditions for that person to receive their reward later in life when they can no longer physically earn money, and that reward will come precisely from the time when they used their energy and labor ecologically and effectively for the good of the planet. So we need to realize this is no longer about some linear idea that everyone should automatically receive guaranteed retirement income. That's the kind of stability you find in a cemetery. Instead, people should already be asking themselves, how ecologically are they earning their money on Earth? How much good does their work actually bring to the planet, to other people? Does it support health and growth? Is their labor truly needed?
I completely agree with you. Sometimes, even when someone loses their retirement income for some reason, they still have great investments, amazing children, grandchildren, a country house, the ability to travel, and so on. That's exactly how it works. But let's say we're still looking at it from a more linear point of view. Is there any small practical bit of advice? Say someone has some savings and they're generally trying to live by what they believe, but they're not perfect yet. Should they be considering alternative retirement funds or types of investment?
When we get into topics like investment funds, the financial system, or currencies themselves, that's when we'll really dive into this. Because no matter how many times I've been asked where to sit or what position to take to stay forever young and healthy, my answer is always the same. There is no such position and no such place that guarantees you a meaningful retirement income. But from a futurological standpoint, I can say this. If we begin to embody a real sense of kindness, and it's crucial to understand that kindness from pity, meaning from fear, is completely different from kindness out of love, meaning from joy and interest. They're not the same thing at all. Then if we start experiencing joy and true kindness, this system will begin forming conditions around us, the right people, the right opportunities, and we'll naturally find ourselves drawn towards some tool for preserving our money, and that tool will serve us. And even if it doesn't work in the usual sense, because we were kind to ourselves and kind to others, we'll still receive bonuses. Because the foundation of life on earth is still mercy, virtue, and the state of happiness and pleasure we live in. I can even give an example. My dad worked for many years, held important positions, earned high salaries, and yet the retirement income he has today is extremely low, and we can try to justify that any way we like. But I've said this before, even in a country with high corruption, every person is still responsible. For example, when they pay taxes or utility bills, and I include myself here, they often do it with discomfort or reluctance, especially when the amount doesn't match the value or the feedback we get in return. Roughly speaking, we might want to pay, but our energy picks up on something else. That when we pay for a product, and taxes are a social product, something we receive in the form of public services. And if, from the point of view of our energy, the price doesn't match the value, then our subconscious resists giving that money. And in that case, the money we did pay, if it felt mismatched to our energy, almost inevitably ends up either in inefficient government projects or in the hands of corrupt officials. Now, back to my dad. He made a great investment, though he didn't realize it at the time, in me. And even though, back when he was just a bit over 20 and already had one child, he wasn't too happy about having another one, it was stressful, and logically, he didn't want to go through with it. It turned out to be his greatest investment in his own future. And because of that, He feels much better today than many others who don't have that kind of investment.
In his case, it was an energetically unconscious kind of thing. He just passed on his potential and now he's receiving these amazing bonuses in return.
And having reflected on all of this, that's exactly why I bring up this example. No matter how it all played out, he has this inner sense of acceptance. I'd even say joy, that I've been able to succeed at something. And the more sincere that joy is toward others, especially toward one's children, the more subconscious bonuses begin to show up. And they eventually form what we call a financial cushion.
I have a simple example too. I think a lot of people have experienced something like this. My grandmother didn't know anything about retirement funds, and I don't think there were any alternatives back then anyway. She saved what she saw as her extra money and put it aside for my university. She believed that was the best possible investment, and I think many people do the same. But the most important thing is to do it without regret, without expectations, and with all the qualities you just mentioned.
That's how a society is shaped. It's about having the right priorities in our values. And again, if we're going to talk about money, which we'll get to a bit later, then the key thing is identity, man and woman. Because money operates according to the principle of harmony between a man and a woman.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Maybe we can come back to this from a different angle later. Should we be saving for old age or not?
In my opinion, everyone should act by their worldview. If someone feels comfortable saving for old age, then my opinion is, yes, they should. If they have inner confidence that everything will be fine, and they're willing to bet on something that might not turn out the way they hoped, then no, they don't need to save. They can live the way they feel is right, and place their trust in God or in the state if they choose. Either way, everyone must take personal responsibility. When someone comes to me, for example, with a health concern and asks, "Do I need surgery? Or can I avoid it through physical means, like diet, detoxing, exercise? Or should I just go and get the operation?" We always make decisions based on where fear is. If the person is very anxious and afraid, then yes, it's better to go ahead with the operation. But if they're confident, if they have strength and inner potential, then it's better to first try the physical non-invasive path to restore their health. It's the same here. If someone finds it difficult to accept the unknown, to accept not knowing how their future will unfold, then they need to choose financial instruments, some kind of investment in their own future. In a way, they need to feed their fear.
All right, I'm satisfied with that answer. Let's move on to the financial instruments of the future. Here's the question. Will paper money disappear? And if it does, what will be the alternative for physical savings? Precious metals or something else?
Paper money will disappear almost everywhere. Even paper itself, as a physical medium, will gradually cease to exist in the near future, and that will create favorable conditions for the ecology of planet Earth. Yes, I agree that we need to create systems where even the production of paperwork is in harmony with the planet. Because we've seen that the path we once chose, involving complex chemical processes to make paper from trees, turned out to be a dead end. At that time, people's worldview didn't allow them to see it, and lobbyists created the conditions to remove the competition, enter the market, and destroy a vast number of forests. Forests that, energetically speaking, are responsible for creativity, interest in life, and inner strength, and as a result, we lost our inner footing. Because if we had preserved the vast plantations of industrial hemp, which was once used to make paper, we would have had a product that was eco-friendly, water-resistant, and didn't require such harsh chemical processing. Plus, hemp improves soil fertility, and it helps preserve huge swaths of forest. But our worldview reflects itself onto the planet, and now we're paying a steep price for it. So now, as we all move toward digital technologies, naturally, that means moving away from physical paper and stepping into a new level of life.
And of course, it's clear that paper money was just a stage. As we were taught, it all started with shells. Then, when gold was discovered, people began minting coins from gold and other metals. Then paper money appeared. And now, As we move into the digital format, where most people already receive money directly into their bank accounts, it really is a different kind of life. But naturally, in our physical material world, and we are physical beings, there's this sense of discomfort, this unease. What can I touch? What can I hold in my hands? Will there still be something physical left? Like metals, for example?
Nicole, let me put it this way. When the first mobile phone appeared, and I happened to be one of the first to get one, I spent the whole first month wondering, where's the base? I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that it worked on its own. We'd been waiting 15 years in line just to get a landline installed. That was a luxury and a pain, because the entire apartment building would come over to our place to make calls. And when they finally took away the landline and gave me just a mobile handset, I kept thinking for a long time, but where's the base station? It's the same thing here. Our mind keeps looking for confirmation from childhood, from the toys we used to have, and for our kids, and for our grandkids, no doubt. That question won't even come up.
They'll be told, why would you need a mobile phone? Just make the call.
Exactly, just call straight from your head. And every generation grows up thinking, oh wow, I lived in the greatest era. We invented the steam engine. Or wow, I was there when airplanes took off and we created aviation. And for us, you and I can say, we lived at the time when mobile phones and home computers first became widely available. And each new generation looks back at the previous one and thinks, oh my God, how on earth did they manage with steam trains, and how on earth did they live without mobile phones? So what I'm trying to say is this: our desire to store money in so-called precious stones or precious metal, that's fear.
Not only fear.
Sure, it can be real estate,
Cars.
or other material assets, but that's a separate topic. Right now, I'm talking specifically about paper money, which has value for one reason: agreement. Agreements between certain institutions. Because if you and I were to issue our own currency, say AP Nicole, printed beautifully on a color printer, and walk into a store to pay with it, we wouldn't be able to buy anything. For one simple reason: we never agreed that it has value. So when we agree, or when old agreements still carry momentum, that gold is liquid, that platinum, silver, diamonds, emeralds are liquid, that's still just our agreement. Back in the day, when Native Americans captured pale-skinned settlers and found pouches filled with yellow dust, they'd just dump it out, because to them it wasn't valuable. They couldn't understand why anyone would carry around that kind of nonsense, because they didn't share the agreement that gold was valuable. So your question is really about what?
It's not my question.
The one you voiced.
Of course.
So, the real question is, do I want to have gold bars with official stamps on them, locked away in a safe or under my pillow or in a bank deposit box or wherever, just to feed my sense of stability, which in truth comes from fear?
Sure, because the next question is, will digital money become a tool for controlling people?
From the position we're in now, it really does seem like digital technologies aren't exactly working in our favor. Because with access to tech, any intelligence agency or government body can dig into your computer, your bank account, your phone, and retrieve private, personal information that's none of their business. And since the boundaries of access and legitimacy, especially for fiscal agencies, are so blurred, there are often serious overreactions. To put it simply, they're just overdoing it. If we dig deeper, it's actually our subconscious that creates the tax systems and structures of control that directly reflect our worldview. They suppress us because we allow ourselves thoughts that aren't helpful for the planet or for society, and so we get blocked even before those thoughts can fully take shape. That's why we need to shift the conversation, not toward finances, but toward the psychology that shapes our finances.
That's why we're asking you.
And that's why I'll say this: every regulatory authority, just like many businesses, tends to chase total dominance. They want to dominate their competitors or the processes they oversee, but that's a huge delusion, because in doing so, they cut themselves off from what keeps them alive. If a state exerts excessive control over its people, and it depends on those people, that state will eventually collapse. because that society will lose the desire to be curious, to take initiative, to expand the boundaries they've been cornered into by that system. Suppose people stop resisting the tax system entirely. In that case, the state will simply cease to exist, because it's placing more emphasis on control than on development, more on stability than on curiosity.
But in that process, won't ordinary people suffer the most?
And still, I would say no one will really suffer at all.
You mean even if the state functions like that?
Because the state is a direct reflection of the people's worldview. And when the state collapses, it's because that worldview collapses with it. These days, what I'm seeing, and again, I'm only speaking from my own experience and the slice of reality I've witnessed in Europe, is that the level of professionalism is plummeting at an astonishing rate. Why? Because everything is now supposedly built around human-centered working conditions, social guarantees, fixed schedules, time off, comfort. But as a result, professional competence becomes secondary and people stop fulfilling the very function they're being paid for. And again, I'm speaking about Europe, not Africa, not Asia. They have different dynamics, but Europe could stop functioning altogether for one very simple reason. The care for people has grown so excessive that we've forgotten to ensure they remain effective in their professions, to keep them engaged and alive with interest, with drive, with that spark of passion that fuels development. Instead, they've become infantilized. Not everyone, but a large majority. And the trend is clear. Infantilization has risen and effectiveness has dropped by nearly tenfold on average. And if this keeps going, the European economy, within 7 years, will turn into a massive black hole. And that black hole will be filled with people who no longer want to live life because they've lost the need for anything at all.